Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Founder Files. Before I get into the context of today's episode, I just want to acknowledge that everyone in the audience comes from very different businesses, different life cycle stages, different industries, but the commonalities that happen when you're scaling always come down to people, they come down to systems, they come down to handling customer demand, ensuring that customer satisfaction, quality is there, maintaining culture as you're growing, maintaining your sanity as an entrepreneur, putting your management team together. It's all a whole different kettle of fish, but there's these commonalities across every business. And what I really want to get into is with this podcast in general, but specifically with this episode, is into this operational chaos and systems with regards to people. And I think there's few better businesses to highlight this than anyone in the logistics space, because within logistics, your business model and your profit is so dependent on making sure that your processes, your systems, and your people are incredibly efficient, because you are in a game of efficiency and you're kind of fighting time in many ways. So these operations have got so many golden nuggets that I think so many entrepreneurs can take away from this, which is exactly why today I'm speaking to Cheri Afonso, who is the CEO and co-founder of HouseHoppers. Now, HouseHoppers is a moving and removals company, but more of a concierge service than it is just moving. And they are a premium tier within the industry. But I'll let her explain why and what essentially that means and how they revolutionized the industry. But in this episode, we get into the details of obviously that and how they revolutionized the industry and how they found product market fit in their own way. We're also going to get into how she managed to stop wearing all the hats in the business and how she managed to step up as CEO whilst replicating the quality standards and expectations that she had for our staff and her customers in her operations. We talk about how she managed to build out their processes and systems in order to enhance this customer satisfaction that was so critically important to the business's differentiation, and how she managed to achieve standardization, efficiency, and growing profits throughout the business. We talk about how she built out her management team and why it took 3 years to hire their finance manager and how they're still on the journey of building their management team now. And we get so many insights into the challenges involved here, but what it looks like to get it right and to get it wrong. And we also talk about, from Cheri's perspective, how they expanded into multiple geographies without having permanent staff on the ground, which I think is something that's so interesting for anyone looking to expand into geographies, is how do you do this without permanent people, in those geographies? And finally, we talk about how she tied all of this stuff around processes, people, systems, and culture in order for her business to successfully scale. So this episode is an absolute goldmine of really practical insights on the operational challenges that come with scaling. And like I said, everything from culture to management, systems, people, processes, changing roles, changing hats. This is it. This is the episode that I think so many founders can get value from if you're in the scaling journey. Now, if you're not already following the Founder Files, make sure that you are following us now on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and if it's a little bit too long, didn't listen, make sure you're following us on Instagram, TikTok, or LinkedIn to make sure that you get these snippets and these wisdom from founders like Cheri, to make sure that you don't miss any of these golden nuggets that's going to help you cut out the amount of trial and error it takes to scale a business. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Cheri Afonso. Welcome to The Founder Files, the podcast that's like eavesdropping on a conversation with a successful entrepreneur over a fireside chat. Join me, Cameron Coots, through this unique experience of unfiltered stories and insights from scaling founders around the globe as they share their ups, downs, and everything in between. Hi, Cheri. Welcome to The Founder Files. As I was saying to you offline, I'm very excited for this conversation because the typical scaling issues that any business owner experiences often come down to people and systems. And when it comes down to logistics businesses, those are the things you absolutely need to get right, because that's so core to what your business is, that if you don't have the right systems in place and you're not being able to operationally execute when there's fine margins and fine timelines, then your business is in trouble. So I think there's going to be amazing lessons to be heard here about how you get operations right, how you scale. And yeah, I can't wait to get into it. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Cameron. Looking forward to it.
So I obviously, kicked us off by saying that you're a logistics business, but it's like not every logistics business is obviously the same. So I guess, can you just unpack to me a bit about your business and the business model?
Okay, so we run a company called HouseHoppers. We are a relocation concierge service. We've kind of taken the moving industry and we have stepped it up a couple of notches and up the standard in the industry. What we basically do is we come into a client's home, we pack up, move, and unpack in a single day. We unpack to the point where beds are made, curtains are hung, appliances are connected, TVs are back on the wall, fridges repacked, clothes in the cupboards. We've really changed the way people move home. We've tried to revolutionize it. We also then have a whole list of concierge services added onto that. So we'll open and close your utility account, get your refunds back, get the house cleaned before and after the move. We have handyman services, pool table removals. There's a long list of additional services that we add onto every move to make every customer's experience a moving experience.
So, Cheri, you're talking about being on this scaling journey, right? And the way that you have described it, it sounds like you're getting help from external people. And although you're in control and you're kind of in the driving seat, it seems like there's other people helping you along with that journey. Do you mind just explaining to me and that audience who that might be?
Sure. So we were very fortunate. We got accepted onto a 10X program with a company called Geographies. They are coaches to a company that help you in all the different disciplines of the business. So there's the strategy, the execution, the marketing, the sales, the finance, and they consult with you. They figure out where you are and where you need help, and they plug into the business from a coaching perspective with the people that need it, and they just give them that edge up. So what they basically do is they step in and they become a sounding board, they become a guiding board, and one of the really big things they do is they hold you accountable. If you say you're going to do it, you need to do it, which is really important. I find that without having the support of coaches and programs like that, we wouldn't be where we are at the moment. We would be floundering way at the bottom and we would be in the percentage that possibly wouldn't make it. So having a coach and having people on your side to guide you, people that have been there, people that have got the t-shirt, you need them. In the scale-up journey, it is essential.
I couldn't agree more. It's the exact reason why Metavolve exists as a company. And I've got loads of respect for what Jason and the Edge Growth team have been able to do with 10X. And it's very similar approaches and philosophies, but ours is quite different in the sense that we're quite a lot more specialized than they are. So we focus entirely on the strategy and execution point because our philosophy is that we're not consultants, right? We're coach facilitators. So we're never going to come in to tell someone how to run their businesses because no one should know how to run their business better than an entrepreneur. But this point, as you said, is the scale-up journey is fundamentally different to what it was in the early days as an experience. And the point is, how is it that I can take all this knowledge and understanding I have of my business to really move forward in that direction? So instead of the functional expertise with Metavolve, like what Edge Growth does, and again, we can't compete with that. And that's, again, loads of respect for what they do, but we have no intention of being that way either. Because for us, as we want entrepreneurs to go through this phase, but not be dependent on anyone externally in order to do so. So we go through this strategic process to help clarify the strategy, help the entrepreneurs themselves develop into more powerful CEOs and leaders, and have this roadmap that they can execute, but also have a strategy that they can articulate clearly to their team so that other people can execute on what they're doing, and they can pinpoint specifically when they need the right capabilities to execute the strategy. And I say that deliberately is because, again, instead of having this diagnostic approach of saying, oh, these are the gaps, this is what you need to work on, every entrepreneur I've worked with intuitively knows that. It's just prioritizing which ones that we need to be able to focus on. So allowing the entrepreneur to really be the leader and coaching this process, but we kind of keep them in check with these kind of guardrails to execute the strategy. That's our model and how it's slightly different. But the point is, I fundamentally agree with you that it's necessary. It's a critical stage in a business, and in my opinion, it's the riskiest one because the stakes are higher.
Absolutely. If there's any bit of advice that I can give any entrepreneur is find your right fit coach. It is essential and it'll make or break your journey.
On that exact note, if anyone listening to this wants to figure out if Metavolve's the right fit for you, no strings attached, you know where to find me. Or if you don't, go to metavolve.co. We'll set up a call and would love to chat to you. So, Cheri, now moving into the story. we've given the founding story. You've kicked us off. You've built this business that's really revolutionized these industry standards. I just want to get a bit more specific. Is like, what were those standards, and why did you think they needed to change?
So the standards were exceptionally low. By the age of 23, I think I'd moved 27 times in my life. And I'd experienced the moving industry. Yeah. I had a fair amount in the moving industry as a client rather than operating in it. To coupled together with my industry in the real estate industry, I realized that there was a need for people to trust one of the most difficult events in a person's life. And nobody offered that. They all came in saying, guys, things got broken, things got stolen, they didn't stick to times. The level was so low, it was actually shocking. And when I sold houses, I realized that end part of the journey ruined the entire process of buying a house. Buying a house is an exciting time in somebody's life. It's something really important. And when they hit that part, everything just turned rotten. It really ruined the experience. And I thought that if I could finish the experience of buying a new home and moving people in and enjoying that experience, I'd have them as clients for life. And that's kind of how the whole business thing came about. So I moved from real estate into that.
Okay, that's super interesting. And I just immediately think of that niche customer segment, specifically at that time of moving into the new house that you purchased. And it makes me think of two things in terms of how, what the customer psychology might be. In terms of the one point is it's that to be able to pay for a premium concierge service for moving, specifically when there's this point of excitement, but around this pain of moving as well, there's already this anchoring to the fact that you've spent a huge amount of money on this house already. So to pay a premium for moving, that number looks a lot smaller than that in terms of what you've just paid. So that's the one point. But the other point, I've also got the counter hypothesis, the fact that I've spent so much money, I actually can't afford to do this, and I'm going to suck it up myself. What did you find to be the reality with your customers?
So what we found was initially it was all price-based. The entire industry was price-based. It was a price war. We stepped out of that price war, and instead of selling on price, we sold on value. So we got people to understand that they start packing 3 weeks in advance. They live in absolute chaos for 3 weeks. It takes them 3 or 4 days to move over, and then they have boxes lying around for another 3 years. So the marriage counseling fees, the chiropractor thereafter, the breakages, the damages, and the chaos, actually our value landed up being cheaper than going through that experience. And that's kind of where we stepped in and we said, well, guys, if you want to enjoy your new home, you want to stay married, you don't want to have to go to the chiropractor, you get us in.
100%. And I love the way that you were able to nail that, because that's quite a journey, right? And that's when you get market positioning right, is because you understand your customers and your clients really in depth to say, are your needs? What are your pain points? How are you behaving? What is life like for you? And the difference is when you don't do that properly, naturally you become a commodity. It's a race to the bottom, exactly what you said. It's like everyone in the industry is just a price battle and a price war, because how you position yourself is, I'm a moving company. And so, okay, everyone's a moving company. How do I do that? But the point, the different positioning once you understand the customers is you don't position yourself as a moving company. You position yourself as a concierge service to ensure that you have a fantastic moving experience and you can feel at home as soon as possible without having to deal with all the pains, but literally and figuratively in the experience of trying to settle in your new space. Wow, that doesn't sound like a moving company. That sounds much better.
The only thing is we operate in the moving company space. That's the only common denominator.
Exactly. And I think that's the biggest difference. And that's the point of market positioning and doing that well, which is exactly why in terms of our process, that's where we start. Actually, that's literally the first workshop. So I've got a sense of immediately now how you were differentiated in the market. You're pricing according to value. And that's always the greatest place to start. Is trying to compete on price is dangerous. And that's also why the industry specifically is so tight on margins, is because everyone's playing that price war already.
Yeah.
So talk to me around how is it that you really knew you had product market fit? Like, what was the point when, you had this moment of confidence where it's like, we've nailed this. What was that like?
So that happened, I'd probably say about 10 years into the business, when we ran the utility concierge and the moving as a sideline. And the moving then took off as it overtook the bread and butter side of the business, which was the utility concierge. And it became more profitable and it became more common to do moves than it did on the other side. The market kind of pushed us into that space. There was no purposeful active marketing done or anything like that. It was all built on referrals. It was word of mouth, one friend telling another friend, to the point where we grew, where we actually couldn't keep up anymore, and we had to start the scale-up journey. That's when we said, okay, guys, we're at that point now. We need to do something about it.
So can you talk to me more specifically about what that trigger point is? Is because every business that's different, right? And it's like what was that moment where you knew you had to change as a company, and what did you have to change?
So that moment came in where I was not sleeping. I had no time to myself. Family suffered, and there just wasn't enough of me to go around anymore. When I couldn't handle the company on my own, because I used to handle all the different disciplines. I used to have admin staff in place that handled the day-to-day stuff, but I did all the strategy, I did all the high-end stuff myself. And there came a point where I just physically couldn't do it anymore. At that point, I realized that we had sorted out the operational side. We had built the base. We had the business coming in, and I now needed people that had better skills than me to handle different disciplines. And it's a hard pill to swallow as a entrepreneur, because you're now employing somebody to do a job better than what you can do it. And you've been doing it for the last 15 years on your own. So that was a really difficult thing. And I think once I crossed that bridge and I realized that there were professionals out there that could do things better than I could, I realized that we were starting the scale-up journey unintentionally. And it was then that we made a formal decision to actually go get help, go find more of those people, and help in terms of a coach to organize those people to get everything done.
So I just want to unpack that realization, because it also, like, the point is there's the separation between the professionals and the skills that you realize you need in the business, but it's also the skills that you needed as an entrepreneur and leader and the coach guiding you. So I think we've spoken enough about the coach one. I guess for now we could talk about that forever because that's my business. But the point around, what are the things that you noticed within your own business that you needed support and help? Like, because I think there's the execution part, and then the operations that you well oiled. What are the other things that you knew you needed support in?
So the biggest part came about where I realized that I needed to set up a management team. The skill set came through the people that I wanted to put in my management team. I had basic knowledge on all the different disciplines in the business, and I could do the basics. But in order to take us up to that next level, and in order for us to scale the business, I had to bring professionals in. Funny enough, it started with finance. Finance is my worst division ever. I built this company on love and passion. Finance was not a consideration when we started. So the very first one was to actually bring a finance person in. And we've been going through this journey for about 3 years. Only now have I found the right finance person in the business.
Sure. Why did that take so long?
We just didn't find the right fit. So we would find people that had the right skill, but their passion levels didn't match. And as a company in our culture, we thrive when we have people that are passionate with what we do. The scale-up journey is really, really difficult. And if you're not loving what you're doing and you don't believe in what we do, it's very difficult to keep going at it. So you might have the skill, but you're going to hate what you're doing in it. So there's to find the right people, there's always a balance of the skill, the commitment, and the passion. So much so that when we do a high level hire, we have 3 different interviews. We have the standard interview where they meet the management team. We then have a skills interview with a professional. And then we have a dinner or a lunch to get to know the person personally. And all 3 of those interviews, the last one is probably the most important one. Because if we can't gel as a team, when it gets hard, we fall apart.
100%. And so, like, I've got a very similar but slightly different view of doing this. I mean, so my background, I haven't mentioned yet, but I'm an organizational psychologist by profession. So the way that I like to view it is talent is competence multiplied by commitment multiplied by contribution. So that's why I love it. There was the same thing as like you said skill, commitment, and passion. And the point there is like the reason why it's multiplied is that competence is how well you can do the job. Commitment is how committed you are to the company and its success and what it's trying to achieve. And contribution is how much meaning do you actually get from the work and feel like what you're doing is making a contribution to the world and to the community that you care about. And the reason why it's multiplied is the fact that you can get someone who's relatively low on competence, but they're so committed to the company and they get so much meaning about it. It's like, it doesn't matter if I'm making coffee, throw me, I've got this ultimate service mentality, do what you need to. And that's talent within the company. And I think the really hard part is, especially when you're getting people that are managers and leaders in the team, is you need high on all of those. Because that's the only way as an entrepreneur you can hand over proper trust and responsibility to that. And so the way that we go about assessing for that is the first and foremost is, are you actually interested in what we do? Like for us in terms of hiring is like, are you actually interested in entrepreneurship and strategy? If you're not, I'm going to stop this process now because there's no point in me convincing you about why this is good if you don't already see that. And then from there, it's understanding why. Like, why are you motivated by this? Do we see the world in a similar way? I validate that also with the right psychometric assessments to check if, like, are we going to be a right culture fit? Yeah. And I've got assessments that measure that. For the record, if anyone listening, it's called value orientations. We no longer provide that as a service. If anyone wants to find out more about that, go check out Cognitive. So Cognadev. They provide that assessment. Recommendation, do it on yourself and then do it with people in your management team to see if you see the world the same way. It's extremely useful. The replacement for that is understanding what your values are and then being able to use your values in the recruitment process. That's the more scalable part, but without that, the psychometrics there. So that's essentially the thought there. So love the fact that you did that. So you have you got that process right now in terms of hiring? Have you found the fact that you've got a model that works in terms of being able to find the right people?
So I think we have. It's going to be put to the test because we're not quite there yet. We've done our latest 2 high-end hires who start on the 1st of October, actually. And the next couple of months is going to say if we actually got it right this time. We went from a management team of 6 down to 5, down to 4, down to 3. We then stayed at 3 for a while, and we stayed there for a bit. And then as business started picking up and started growing even more, the 3 of us couldn't handle it. And that's why we've now expanded again. But we've been very specific about these hires to make sure that they're the right people.
Yeah, 100%. As one really should be. That's why that was a gap that we saw with Metavolve in the early days, is like those specialist managerial hires and how to hire for them is a super unique and different approach and skill set. And although we no longer provide the service, it's a great part around going on this longer term journey with our clients is the fact that I've still got this knowledge. So I can say to them, listen, this is what I think you should do in terms of the hiring approach, but also we've got the right partners. Shout out to them as well. So we use Ferva. So FERVA, they're also part of Civitas. And they're a team of organizational psychologists to help with the execution there. Because again, hiring someone for operations when you've done it the whole time is one thing, and you can spot intuitively if someone's going to work out or not. But hiring a finance manager, like as you've shown, is a different ballgame. But look, I think that's a topic in itself about building out the management team, which I want to leave a pin in right now because I want to give the context towards the scaling journey to show where the business is now and how the management team becomes a necessity. So talk to me about that first challenge that you experienced with growth. I mean, like you said that you were super stressed out, you weren't sleeping, your family time was being sacrificed, you were spread too thin, there wasn't enough of you to go around. Where did you kind of start? How did you start like addressing that within the business?
Well, I first had to get over my breakdown. Kind of got to the point where I literally hit burnout. I wasn't interested. I was giving the business up. I was walking away. That year, I didn't even want to celebrate Christmas. And I'm very much a Christmas person. Sure. So at that point, I realized something's got to give. Something has to change. And the first place where I started was I actually stepped out. I needed to step out because I was doing more damage in the business than I was fixing it. Stepped out, took a couple of weeks, figured out where we were, what we needed to do. And in that quiet space, when I stepped out, I realized that this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of the new scale-up journey. But I needed that quiet. And that's what so many entrepreneurs don't do. They don't step out and look at it from an outside point of view, because they're always stuck in it. And that the burnout, and when I hit that point, was probably the biggest blessing ever. Although it didn't feel like it at the time, it really was. It gave me the chance to just say, whoa, okay, what's the next step? Where are we going? And when we hit that next step, I realized that I needed to make sure operations was good and that they were delivering. We weren't doing a huge amount of work to bring more in, but I knew that side was solidified, and it needed work, but it was functional and it was good at that point. Our customers were being looked after. Then I realized, okay, in order to keep this going and in order for me to start growing this business, what did I need? And again, it went to two different things. One was the management team, and the other was systems and processes. So in my bright ideas, my little logistics company, we started looking for software. We started looking for systems that could help us automate the processes, make it easier, take the admin burden off. And I just couldn't find anything that suited us. So in my wisdom, I opened my own dev company within the company. It has to be my most epic failure. My current management team still rag me about it today. But if I hadn't done it, I wouldn't have known. So I chalk it up to school fees, not something I would ever do again. We realized that, again, once we got the coaches, once we got the advice, the guardrails were put in place, we got taught to go look for the software in multiple places, match it up to 80%, and then just fix up or put an API together or dev a little section to make it do what you want to do. Since then, we have got CRMs in place. We now have AI software that does inventories for us. We're really moving into a great tech space. We're at the forefront in terms of the industry, which is really, really nice. And it's cost a fraction of what a dev company did.
Yeah, no, 100% it would. So you bring multiple things to mind. Now, again, I want to take a step back to the point of perspective that you have. And I just want to share, it's like why we named the company Metavolve. So meta means second order, more comprehensive or transcending, and evolve is to develop gradually. So we define Metavolve as taking a more comprehensive view of your business in order to evolve into your next stage of being. That's the whole point of it. Is unfortunately you had that through Burnout. We try to give our clients that through our perspective. And then the next point around what you're doing is, this is the way I like to call it, is build, buy, or borrow strategies. So when you acknowledge that you need a capability within your business and you really wanted to up your systems in tech, it's the thing, what we often do as entrepreneurs, we've got such a do-it-ourselves mentality. That the point is, it's like, I need the skill, let me hire for it. But it's one of those things where it's like, build is do we have enough of the skills internally that I can build someone in towards that in time? Is this something I could potentially borrow by outsourcing, and potentially should borrow? Like capabilities like that are completely non-core. So it's something to essentially borrow or buy. Is this something that I actually need to bring in permanently into the business? And as you gave the prime example, there's naturally our inclination is straight to buy instead of to borrow in the first phase, especially because when we don't know what we don't know. It's one of those things like, I know I need systems and I just need someone in here who's going to understand the business and build the right things accordingly, instead of going to the software development agency and be charged an arm and a leg to build something that probably won't work anyway, because we're going to have to figure it out as we go. It makes more sense to hire internally. So I can imagine that was the logical reasoning. But before going there, obviously systems need to be built off processes need to be built off customer experience, and the thing is, we need to make sure execution right. So just talk to me now around the nature of what's made your business successful is the standard that you've been able to create within the market and for your customers. So obviously the systems are to make it well oiled, but I'm just trying to understand this point around how did you get those quality standards right in the first place, and making sure that they were able to be scalable so that you could have that kind of peace of mind where things feel a little bit less chaotic. Did it start with people? Did it start with systems? Was it a bit of both?
It started with people, because what we offer and what we deliver is all people-based. It's how we make our customers feel, and it's how our staff deliver the experience to make them feel that way. So it was all based around people. Initially, in the early days, I did every single move. I went out with the teams. I put the standard in place. I then had somebody who joined me who came in as a secondary supervisor. And what we found was as I started stepping out, the message and the standard started getting diluted or changed as new people joined. Because obviously I stepped out, new people came in. When we initially did it, I knew that I needed 3 different individuals to do what I did. And not because I'm Superwoman, but because I can manage 3 different elements that generally aren't found in one human being at the same time. I could manage blue collar workers and I could motivate them to get what needed to be done in the best way possible. I could manage a high-end client and relate to them. And then I was the operationally based person. And generally you don't find all 3 in one. So what I did was I found 3 individuals. That's very hard thing to replace
in your kind of business.
Absolutely. So I found 3 individuals, each had those qualities, and I put them together and I used to send them off to do moves. But then we got to the point where we were doing more than one a day because a move takes an entire day to do. Then we were starting to do 2, 3, 4 moves. And as I split them, they would each bring their own elements of what they were good at to that particular job. But then all the other elements were missing. So the standardization was completely out of whack. So the next step in that was to then start standardizing what we did, to say that this is how things get done.
So Cheri, before we get into this standardization point, it's like I still want to go back through that decision to hire people because I can imagine that was something that was quite a difficult decision to make. And the reason why is it's hiring one person versus 3 to do one role, which is essentially yours. I mean, take me through the process of. Because I mean that must not have been an overnight call or realization. No. So what was the point of realizing that you needed to separate that out?
It got to the point where I was out on jobs every single day. I couldn't do the admin in the office. I couldn't run the business. I couldn't do anything else but service the clients. So it got to the point where physically, and when there were 2 moves, I couldn't be in both places at the same time. So I had to start bringing people in. As a small business, like all entrepreneurs, you start in your network. My closest network was family. So I started bringing family in. It was great at that time, but I found that as we went through the scale-up journey, it added more complexity to the issues and to the actual the growth part of it. But at that time, it was amazing, and they were like we chatted before. They had the passion, they had the value, and I taught them the skill. So they didn't have all the skill, but I could teach them different elements of the skill. So it worked in the early stages. As we started growing and I started plugging more people in that weren't family members, it then started getting exceptionally messy. So we had to come to a standardization in terms of how we hired people, what we were looking for, what we expected them to do, how we paid them. Because family members are generally the cheapest labor you can find. Sorry, yes. Family.
Yeah, 100%. No, because look, they're doing this because they care, right? At the end of the day, but the problem is because they care, it means that it's very difficult to have hard conversations because you end up stepping on each other's toes, and it's like, remember, I'm also doing this because I love you, not just because it's like because I'm getting paid. Okay, so that clarifies quite a bit of the points, is because there naturally you had the people that you could trust with that passion in your family, and that separation of roles happened already. In a slightly more affordable ways, because I need you to just be able to handle that client relationship, right? And again, my assumption was it wasn't as well oiled and clear cut as you explaining it now. It's kind of the point is I need your help. I need to handle this job. Please, can you handle that client? Right? If there's issues with the team, give me a call. But I kind of just got to be here. I need you to handle that. This is what we expect. And then you kind of start figuring out, and then probably making a couple mistakes and errors, and it's like, oof, that person shouldn't be talking to that person, like that should be that.
Yeah.
And so I think it's quite a journey, and it makes me think a lot of this is another reason why the scale up journey is so hard. It's because of it's not just as simple as a delegation issue. It's about that realization of the fact that it's like, because you've gotten so good at wearing multiple hats, it's this flawed assumption that someone else can do that. And this is why so many people make the mistake of saying, I need a COO or I need a head of operations or something like that, not realizing that person, that you are actually running 3 functions. And you need to be able to really separate what are these different things and people I'm interacting with to be able to view that? And then the even harder decision is like, I need to fork out almost like 3 times of salaries in order to be able to just have like 20% more peace in my head on a day-to-day basis. And so what was that? Yeah, so you managed to substitute that with family to make it easy through a process instead for other people. Okay, so now I obviously interrupted you in the journey, but I really wanted to double down on that because it really is a significant challenge. And you were able to get family on board. Talk to me the points of family to strangers now and standardization, as you were going to get into.
Yep. So as we grew, we realized that as great as family was in the beginning stages, through the scale-up journey, it became hard to have family in the company because you couldn't have those hard conversations. You couldn't discipline the way you needed them to. And because they were there to help you, you couldn't up the game almost. I think that kind of explains it the best way possible.
Yeah.
Where as now we need to hold people accountable. They have to do what needs to get done because I can't manage and check in on every single job. So there's got to be paperwork that happens. They've got to do it to a certain standard. And when they're not doing it to the standard, they keep looking back at what it used to be like and why do we have to change to this? So a lot of the family issues that we've had in the business is why do we need to change? Why do we need to grow? Can't we just stay the way we were? And the business, although unintentionally we started the scale-up journey, the business took us down that path. We couldn't actually rein it in. So we've had quite a lot of difficulties with family, and not just family, but also legacy people that started the business with me. We feel so committed to them because of their contribution in the early days, but yet they aren't able to operate in the new business. And moving from a startup to a scale up, the business changes. It becomes a completely different model. Things are done differently. Standards change. And getting those people on board to change from what was to what is and what's coming is exceptionally difficult, to the point where we've lost people along the way because their mindset, they weren't able to change the mindset.
So and that's another point where it's not just mindset, is the fact that naturally in early stages of a business, you need Swiss Army knives, like because you are a Swiss Army knife yourself. But the point is, as you start scaling, you need specialists. And the point is, it's not only is it different skill sets, it's also different personalities. People that are very good at being generalists don't want to be specialists. They're stuck in a box and it's boring. And like I like the messiness. And it's like, and those are people that are good, well suited for those environments. It's just the nature of it. So, but Cheri, I want to go again another level deeper, where you mentioned that the business was pulling you in that scaling up journey anyway. What do you mean by that?
So as we did business, as the market education got out there, as the brand awareness grew, the business grew organically. We didn't intentionally grow it. It just started growing to the point where we couldn't keep it small, and we had to start the scale-up journey unintentionally around the business to actually sustain it. So people started phoning, the bookings started coming in, and we got to the point where one move a day, we couldn't just do one. We had to up it to 2, 3. And in order to do that, we needed to put systems, processes, people, and unintentionally, the whole scale-up journey just started. So it wasn't our intention to run in that direction. The company took us in that direction.
And what was this in terms of time frame? Because I imagine that there was this point of looking at, like, kind of looking up and be like, we're very different to how we were X number of months ago.
Yes. So it wasn't months. It happened over years.
Okay.
It was probably about 4 or 5 years. And I think the pivotal moment in that was I started this business with a matric. I had no prior qualifications. Like I said, it was done on love and passion. And through the journey, I decided I wanted to upskill myself, and I went and I got a degree. And after that degree, I started changing things in the business in terms of what I'd learned, the experiences that I'd gained. And just by making those little tweaks, the business started growing, especially on the moving side. So unintentionally, it took off on its own.
I love the fact that you mentioned that, because this also speaks to why our model exists the way that it does. Is it's practically strategy development, but it's weekly 2-hour workshops. So it's like founders like you then, it's like there's no way you'd buy from us now, because obviously you're working with with Edge Growth. And I'm not trying to sell you, I'm just trying to explain this. But the point is that it's weekly workshops because you don't have the time for like a 3-day offsites and strategy and full day workshops. So it's these 2-hour workshops. But the point there is like and it's for you and your leadership team and management team and who you want involved in developing and executing the strategy. And then it's pre-read guides. So when we're talking about this content, is like, how do I think about the market? What is market segmentation versus customer segmentation? What's the difference, right? When we talk about competitive advantages and looking at competitors, how do we define it? For example, in Metavolve, competitor isn't just your key rival. For most software companies, your main competitor is Excel. So looking at that and understanding who your competition is so key. But there's all this knowledge and learning that needs to go under it that we drip feed before each workshop. And each workshop super structured, 2 facilitators. And then by the end of it, it's now you've got immediate ideas that you can implement in the business because you've made these decisions on a weekly basis. And you can see this improvement going. And like as the bigger picture strategy comes together over like 4 to 6 months, you've immediately implemented all these ideas that you've gotten from this learning experience and this practical process that works exactly to that. And like this is where, even for me, trying to explain what it is that we do. So obviously it's around strategy development, but I also don't want to compare it to like a degree or like an MBA because it's not that. And it's obviously that's a very different desire to purchase, but it really is this beautiful intersection between leadership development and strategy development. But not only is the strategy being developed, but as a leader, you're getting all this knowledge with your team that you can utilize being forward. And just final point here on the passion rabbit hole that I'm in now. Actually, on Tuesday this week, I had a client say to me that going through this experience has actually made me a better entrepreneur. And his co-founder said, "I've always been an expert on my business, but this experience has made me feel like a business expert." I'm like, that's why we do what we do.
I must be honest, the big difference.
Yeah.
I want to add to that because the big difference in going and studying a degree is you're learning the theory on that side. When you go through a scale-up journey with a coach, you actually land up pulling small levers, learning little bits at a time, and implementing them. When you go for an 8-month course, you forget half the stuff and you don't actually implement it. So the better approach is the small changes as you go along. It actually has a bigger impact on what you do.
100%. It's why we do what we do, and it's why our clients actually have the results that they have. Let's pause here for a moment. If you've made it this far into the episode, it's probably because we're talking about things that you're trying to implement in your business. You found your sweet spot in the market, you've gained momentum, and you've already been through a phase of growth. Because of this, you know that on the outside, growth is super sexy. But on the inside, it's incredibly difficult to achieve and to sustain. So now I've got a question for you. Now that you know the sacrifices it takes to achieve growth, how much time are you currently spending thinking about your direction and your next phase of growth? I bet not as much as you'd like, because you're still in the thick of it. Leading, deciding, pushing for performance, pursuing new opportunities, maybe even thinking about selling the business. See, your story is yours. But this chapter where growth meets complexity, this is when things get hard. Because you can listen to insights from podcasts and stories from people that have been there before. But applying it to your context is a completely different ballgame. So let me help you. If you want to have a 90-minute, no strings attached conversation with me, then head over to Metavolve's website in the description of this podcast below, and let me help you navigate this next phase of growth. Because at the end of the day, building a great business is complex, but it doesn't have to be complicated. Okay, so Cheri, so you've taken us through this journey now of transitioning from people to having new people within the business. It's kind of a critical part. You've been pulled on this kind of scaling up journey, but I still really want to understand this point of really getting the standards, the quality, the customer experience right. Because as you said, this takes a while, and you even said it was 4 years. Is that academically speaking, the average time for a scaling journey is actually 6 years. So it's not like a short experience that people go through. What I still want to really clarify is that you mentioned that you now have these specific roles. I mean, you've got like a supervisor role to have with the team. You've got someone who can be a bit more of a customer liaison interface. Don't know what the job title there is. but then also someone who can handle the kind of back office management, because there's a lot of planning and organizing needed for logistics. So it was a big realization of the separation of you into that first line management functional points around getting this to run. You spoke about systems, but what are these there must have been processes involved, because the point for you to be able to step back, and even though you've got people in place, the standards are there, and your quality standards are high given the nature of your business. So what did you do? Was there process mapping? Was there manual writing? What practically did you do in this process?
So initially, we started with people just understanding what needed to be done. And they used to execute their job on a daily basis, but the IP and the processes lived in their heads, which caused a massive problem. Because if they were off sick or they didn't arrive for work or they decided to go somewhere else, a lot of that IP went with them. A lot of the process went with them. And we had to start from scratch again, rebuild it, and train the new person up. So what we started doing was we implemented two different things. One was we are in the process still of process mapping their entire company. Again, we employed a coach to help us through this. We sent one of our staff members on a Six Sigma course, and we are literally process mapping the entire company to build a company manual, so that every position, every process, every function that needs to be fulfilled in the company, we can refer back to a manual to say, what are the steps that need to be done? What are the dependencies? Who's involved? How does it work? And what does it look like in the end? We're probably halfway through that process, and wow, it's a process. So you kind of map out what you have first. You then get to a final document, and then you start reviewing for efficiencies and improvements. So it's an ongoing thing that we will be doing forever. We've literally created a position around that so that we can continue with the efficiencies, the waste reduction. It actually shows you so many gaps in your business when you start writing it down. And what you think happens and what somebody else thinks happens and how the next person sees it are three different versions, which then it destroys the standardization within the business and ultimately the customer experience. So the process mapping is a really important part. The second part of that was we got very, very strict with our NPS score and our on-time in full score. So although we look at the NPS score in terms of what the customer experiences, and although they don't know all the nitty-gritties that happen in the background, we measure their experience. No, they don't need to, but we need to. So we look at our NPS score, and it is super, super high. It's fantastic. When we first started measuring our on-time in full score, it ranged in the 20s. It was so bad. Sure. But we're also very strict about
when you say 20s, in terms of 20%?
20%, yeah.
Yeah. And now because it is?
We're up to about 40% now. But it was an amazing base point to look at, where we could look at the individual metrics on that on-time in full score, and we actually started identifying where the fires were. What is our most burning issue that we need to attend to now? Fix that. Once that's done, climb into the next one, climb into the next one. So it almost gave us a roadmap and a plan to standardize everything and to make sure that we were doing what we set out to do.
And I love the point of where you started there, because for me, it's always the so what element. Is that because no one, I think, needs convincing around the fact that putting in processes for their business is going to be valuable. But the point, then that's the importance thing. But the urgency thing is that's a 1 out of 5. But the thing is, when you start actually understanding it and doing it from the outside in with your customers, is what happens when you scale without clear processes is what gets impacted is your quality, your customer experience and satisfaction. And what that will then affect is your ability to retain customers and potentially acquire new ones through word of mouth, because your customer experience isn't at the standard that it could be. And all of this also then has that's just on the top line and brand. But then also it has an impact on your profitability, because you're able to execute less. Just because there's so much noise and, as to your point, waste that's involved there. And I love the fact that you spoke specifically from the fact that where are our customers? They're having a great experience, but the standards that we hold to ourselves in terms of deliverability issues and our operations in terms of what's the most important thing for us to do there, that start there, and then we need to process map backwards from there, standardize, and then start putting that into the rest of the business, because everything else in the business really services that. And this is the viewpoint, and from my experience of doing process mapping, I mean, my whole background's organizational design. I love the fact that you said Six Sigma, because my business partner, Brett, he did Lean Six Sigma consulting in the US in industrial engineering and manufacturing environments for a while. So it's this point of optimization moving backwards, because as you start going into these support functions in the rest of your business, everything is so sharp and funneled towards what's the value we're creating for our customer and how do we ensure that that's going down there. And once you start that journey, it's you can't stop, because you see the value immediately as you start cascading that through the rest of the business.
A massive impact it also has is on company culture and the enjoyment and fulfillment that staff members get out of doing what they do. When you're working in an unorganized mess every day, it becomes difficult. You get tired. It causes noise, unnecessary noise. When you clean that up and you make it efficient, people are happier. They deliver more, and they deliver it with a smile on their face. So it also goes to the organizational culture and the work environments that we try and create.
So I find that very interesting, because a huge thing that usually happens when I try to standardize processes, create manuals, essentially at face value, it sounds like a lot more admin, and specifically with people that know the job. But you say that it actually improved their satisfaction, their enjoyment. How did you get that right? How did you get their buy-in to these changes? How did you actually practically go do this process mapping with your team? Like, how did you get the outputs besides having someone do a Six Sigma course? What was it like with the team on the ground?
So with the team on the ground, it was really bad. They were bogged down. There was so much wasted time, manual capturing, duplicate capturing. And by approaching it in a way where we wanted to create efficiencies and make their jobs easier, they bought in immediately. So by coming in, we got their input. We said to them, guys, where do you see improvements? What can we do to make what you do easier? And that's how we got them to buy in. And they were more than happy to climb in and fix it. And then it also made the user adoption easier.
Of course. But what this also speaks to is, like, what this fundamentally requires is that you've got the time, attention, and headspace to be able to do this. So I think every entrepreneur wants to be able to do this with their employees and say, how can things be better? But it's like, I genuinely, like, as much as I want to, I'd almost be doing you a disservice, because I was like, I'd be so distracted. I can't actually execute. And no one wants to go and start something with their employees, but then not be able to finish. So, like, and I don't necessarily want to make assumptions, but I've patched the puzzle piece together. But the point now is, like, you've separated out some of these roles. You've kind of got these processes in place. What was this point that allowed you to go into this real information gathering, this coaching, this real, like, this is what you're describing is leadership, right? And you really are stepping into leadership within your employees. What had to change for you when you noticed that now that's something that I'm not just capable of doing, but I actually have the capacity to do?
The two management team members that I have. Without them, it would not be possible at all. So I've always had a business partner and a co-founder. Previously, she started the Cape Town branch and she had shares. We amalgamated all the different branches into one. And then she became the co-founder within the main branch with me. And then we have another management team member. And without them taking on the roles that they have taken on, I wouldn't be freed to actually sit and think and do the things that I do. So that was the key pivotal point.
And what would you say the focus areas and separations are between you as the management team? I mean, you mentioned the finance manager that you finally got right after 3 years. Like, what are these three roles between you, your co-founder, finance manager? How they're separated, and you're still looking for other managerial roles at the same time. So how do you separate them?
So the one was brought in, funny enough, a family member, my brother. So he studied psychology, and he was brought in initially when I burnt out to help get the culture in the company right. He was brought in on a fractional basis, just to kind of give me some breathing space so that I could come right, and to caretake a bit of the management functions. So he hasn't left since then. He now has a permanent position in the company, and we're hoping to grow him into even bigger positions. He started off on the culture. He then climbed into HR. He then climbed into the finance department, because we kept dropping the ball on that side. He got that stable working. And the great thing about him, it used to annoy me in the past, but he's lazy. Honestly, he's my brother and he's lazy, but he makes the most he is the most brilliant person to find efficiencies because of that. And I always used to fight against it. And as we embraced it, I used to put him into positions that were difficult and were messy and had so many redundancies and needed to be fixed. And he finds the most simple way to get it done. So we've used his strengths to clean up a lot.
That reminds me, there's a quote from Bill Gates that I can't remember word for word, but the point is, it's like he loves hiring smart, lazy people and giving them problems, because they will find the most efficient way to do that, because like, I don't want to do the work, and they will find the best way to make it as efficient as possible. That's not dependent on people.
And that's it. And he's people orientated because he studies psychology and he handles HR and the culture. So he's the perfect fit. He gets people on his side and excited to fix things and make them efficient. So that was an amazing fit. And then on the other side, the co-founder, Cheri, she started the Cape Town branch, which is one of our first geographies that we moved into. And that's a whole story on its own.
We're going to get into that.
We're going to. She is she's operationally brilliant, and she is an amazing salesperson. So we grouped sales and operations and we gave them to her, because sales and operations normally fight. Sales oversells, and then operations doesn't deliver. They don't get all the messages, and it turns into a disaster. So we thought, put them both in the same basket and they'll all speak the same language. And it worked beautifully. So Claire handles the sales and the marketing, Shane handles the HR and the finance, and then I handle the strategy I handle the marketing, and then Shane handles the finance and the HR.
So sales and operations are handled by Claire, hey?
Claire, yes.
Yes. So I also love the separation between this, because I think a lot of people underestimate is that people usually put marketing and sales together, which is often quite a big problem. And the reason why is because marketing is a strategic function and sales is an operational function, right? Because the point, sales is naturally quite short-term and orientated. I got to move fast. I've got to do this accordingly. Marketing is bigger picture. What does the market look like? How are customer behavior is changing? And if they work together, they actually compete in terms of what their incentives and priorities are. So I think putting sales and operations together is fantastic, because it also means that there's a natural, there's no significant handover in terms of the people the customer is dealing with. The fact is, like, I deal with this person, and I go straight into operations, and I feel like I'm getting like a smooth experience. And it just makes sense from a customer perspective, makes sense from an operational perspective to handle that as well. Obviously, people and culture, and I love that was the starting point. And it obviously happened just coincidentally because of your burnout. But one thing that I find, so many entrepreneurs leave HR too late. And the reason why is just because it's a misunderstanding of what HR is. So the way I explained it, like whose fundamental responsibility is HR? It's managers and leaders, because managers and leaders are responsible for hiring, for performance, for getting the best out of the people, for training, for coaching, for ensuring that like everything is kind of compliant and sorted with the team. HR's job is to then support them to do that as best as possible. And the problem is, because this misunderstanding of what HR is HR doesn't usually deliver properly, because it's just an admin function that's in policy, process, procedure. Like, it's there because it kind of has to be. But this realization is the fact that it's like, because managers and leaders are there for people, right? Culture is a leadership function. The people management is the management function. Having proper HR expertise, and this can be outsourced. Again, shout out further. But the point there is like, that's when to support them to be the best that they can be. And often many people leave that too late in the job. I wouldn't say too late, but like, it's often like the clients that we work with is like, once they get to like 50, 60 people, and they're sitting there and like 12 people reporting into them, like doing everything themselves. It's like, once I get them over the line to realize that HR is something that they need to get into, the amount of capacity, and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how much of this I was doing myself, right? That actually wasn't necessary for me to do, but I don't have the right skill set for. And I think that's a big gap to go down, is like the skill set for good HR versus being a good leader are not the same thing. And the problem there is that when people think that I need to hand over HR, it's me admitting that I'm not a good leader. And that's why a lot of people don't necessarily want to do that part, because I can't let other people take charge of my people, but they're fundamentally different things. And it's actually going to free you up to be a better leader.
So I think that applies to all the disciplines of business, is appointing people that are better than you in those different places. If you're appointing a management team, they better have a better skill than what you can. Otherwise, where's their value? And I think entrepreneurs make that mistake often where they're too scared to appoint a better skilled person than themselves. Because where does their value go? Where does their value lie if somebody else can do it better than them?
Yeah, and that's the journey that we get with when I hear entrepreneurs turn CEOs, is they are the most alive they've ever been because they've got everyone around them that's better than them, but they've got this intimate understanding of all of the company and all of the people and all of the customers, that it's the bits in between and it's these key and pointing just the right direction. Like, let me just focus you here, do this, etc. And now I'll be involved in deal making and meetings and helping the industry flourish. But it's the point of like true leadership where literally all you have to do is just make sure people are pointing in the right direction, go. And and when people get that right, the level of fulfillment that they have is amazing. And
life
so,
changes.
Cheri, actually, I want to actually get into that. Is like, what is your job, right? Because CEO is like it's one of those things where, cool, I'm a person at the top. What does that actually mean? What is your job on a regular basis?
So a CEO on the high level is I manage the strategy and the execution of the strategy. So I'm the dreamer, I'm the thinker. I come up with the new ways of doing things. When there are I build the strategy and I create the plan and I then pass down to the teams and the teams need to execute and I monitor on a continuous basis. I climb into problems. So when there's a burning issue in the company and the teams are struggling to get something done or in the different divisions, I climb in at a high level and I problem solve. So I've got really high problem solving skills and I absolutely love it. They'll come to me at the problem and we'll be like, okay, that's it. So I still retain that part of the business because that feeds my soul. It keeps me going in that I still get to touch the ground every once in a while, but I'm not stuck there all the time. So I climb into minor things. And then I do the marketing as well. So as our management team grows, I've been able to let go of a lot of the disciplines. Everybody's still reporting to me. I make sure that we're moving in the right direction, that the right things are being done, and I hold my management team accountable. I am very big on accountability. If you say you're going to do it, make sure you do it. If you can't do it, make sure there's a really good reason why it's not done. One of the things on our 10X journey is that we are one of the strongest teams in terms of execution. So we come up with a plan and we run and we get it done. Sometimes to our detriment because we change too quickly, but it's something that we're really good at. We've learned how to handle the change management within the company and get people excited for change opposed to fighting the change. And it's one of our strengths in that we can pivot and we can change as needed and we get through it as quickly as possible.
How did you get that change management component right? The fact that you mentioned that as part of your secret sauce, but the thing is, it's so, the initiative, the ownership, the buy-in, it's something that so many entrepreneurs struggle with. How did you get that right?
Part of it was reading a book called Extreme Ownership. So what Extreme Ownership taught me, and then the second book, Lead Up, Dichotomy of Leadership, is that I started making people accountable in their own divisions. I gave them the ownership. I gave them the authority. And as we needed to change, we ensured that communication was done well in advance. We listened to everybody. We got their input, and to the point where some of their input was so valuable that we actually applied it. We hadn't thought about it, and they brought things to us. And the fact that they felt heard, and they felt that the change was to their benefit. So we got them excited about it. I'm amazing at selling stories. I'm a visionary, lyrical type of person. And having those conversations with them and including them in the change, not just making them endure the change, was a game changer for us. Because they were now part of the change that was happening. It wasn't just us saying what was going to happen. They had a say in how we were going to do it and how we were going to execute it. And that buy-in was amazing.
Yeah. And look, it's the same thing that we do internally. It's the point where if you bring the people along on the strategic thinking and decision-making journey, and you actually ask them as like, what do you think we should do here? And genuinely, it's not about the point of I've got these preconceived ideas and I'm just actually waiting for you to say the same things that I think. It's genuine. It's like, I need you to make the call here. Like, what's going to happen? And then the first bit is a little bit like often a bit clunky. It's like, oh, I'm not used to making these calls. I'm not necessarily sure, etc. It's like, cool, then sleep on it. Give it some thoughts. Like let me know tomorrow. And then even there, it's going to be a little bit imperfect. It's like, maybe let's tweak this and this. And just that habit comes in after a couple of weeks and a couple of months. This person is just up there, making decisions and being the leader themselves. And it really is it's that point and that myth that people are born with leadership. It's actually just the fact that no one's had the opportunity to think and behave that way. And just by putting them in that shoes and kind of forcing them to be like, I'm not making this call for you, but I'll support you, figure it out. They do relatively quickly.
Yeah. So we have a saying within our management team is that we want a management team so strong that nobody can identify who the leader is.
Oh, I love that. So the way that I also like to explain it is the fact that a lot of people view leadership as a role or as a person. For me, leadership is a function. It's a function that's required in your business, and how you fill and populate that is entirely up to you and what's right for your company. But if you make sure that leadership is a function, it's never just like, there's no such thing as one leader. Is the fact that it's just, you just have a good leadership within the business. And how that showed up is that, like the very simple way that you can describe a good business is they have an exceptional track record, strong management team that's very complementary in nature. They know where they're going and how they're going to get there. That's it, right? It doesn't matter what company of what size. If you've got those 4 things, you're a great business.
Yeah, winning recipe.
100%. Easier said than done, though. That's the nature of explaining simplicity on the other side of complexity, is the fact that it's like, it makes a lot of sense, but there's a lot that gets into that.
The headaches that go into building that, and the school fees and the learnings. Wow. It sounds so simple, 100%. But it's a hard journey. It's a really hard journey.
But look, I also think the great part about it is it speaks. I also say it in that order deliberately. Is that you first need to make sure that you've got a great track record. The way that you do that is by doing the same things over and over and over again with your customers and adding value. Naturally, you will start growing as you've done, and then you put a good management team together. And then you make sure that as a management team, you know where you're going, and it's very clear how you're going to get there. Like that's the kind of point in the process. So the hardest part is those first 2 steps. Because once you get those things done, it's then making sure that you can then have a clear strategy that you can then execute is just the next point. And then making sure that you keep following through with that. And yeah, at least in principle, the actual execution of things is a little chaotic and hectic, and it's just life, it's business. But to build a great business, it's the school fees originally. So Cheri, okay, we've spoken about your management team. We've spoken quite a bit about your culture now. We've unpacked how you put all of that together, the on-site execution. We've gotten a sense of the processes. Now, talk to me about the systems, right? I mean, we gave like a bit of a chat around, bringing in your own development capability, realizing that was necessarily the right approach. You spoke about like getting systems 80% of the way there and APIing. I don't think we gave that enough meat for the topic. So talk to me now around, because we've spoken about the operational standardization and processes, but systems is like, there's a lot more to that. So talk to me about that journey that you went on and some of the challenges you had to overcome in the process after the devs were removed from the business.
The whole dev house. So going through that whole dev journey, we realized that one of the big reasons that it failed was because we didn't have the process mapping done. You're building a system around a process and you haven't defined the process. It was the most ridiculous thing, but in hindsight, we know that now at least. So in terms of the systems that we need now, it's part of it is automation, but another part of it is data gathering. So going through the scale-up journey, we found that you need to pull little levers and make little changes to get big results. And we weren't able to make those decisions because we weren't seeing proper data. And that's where the whole Six Sigma thing came in, because you can gather data and you can interpret it in 500 different ways, and it's going to give you 500 different answers. But you need to understand what that data is telling you. So with the system side, it was part automation to make the employees' work life a little bit easier and more automated. What that also did was it helped us through the scale-up journey, because as we went through it, we realized that we were very, very salary heavy for a service industry. So we benchmarked ourselves against international standards, and we were probably sitting about 20% higher than what we were supposed to be. in terms of the industry benchmark. Now, we are services related. We salary heavy because the manpower and the labor to execute our jobs is considerable, and we pay our staff a premium, but we also needed to bring that down. So instead of employing more people to get more work done through the journey, we put automated systems in place to make things easier. So between Shane and his efficiencies that he created, we then took those efficiencies and we automated them, which created even more efficiencies and time savings, which meant that people could spend more time with customers, have less of a hectic work day, and get through so much more. So it made sense to automate things.
The reason why I'm smiling knowingly is because it's like this is such a normal part of the journey, is that we get to this point when how is it that I'm going to be able to solve for the scaling issue is like, it's just hire more people. That's what's worked up into this point. I need to do that. But you get to the point where you can become so financially bloated, and not just financially bloated, is it can actually, because like the increase in people is the ultimate point, increase in complexity within a business. The more people there are, the more complex the business becomes. And so with that means naturally inefficiencies. And so the point there is, instead of hiring people, is how is it that I can, through process, through systems, through automations, cut down the unnecessary workload that people have so they can do more of what matters instead of just hiring more roles?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what I want to know is what systems and processes did you like build out for that you were able to get more out of your team?
So it kind of started all the way back in COVID, where we were forced to do it. We used to be so paper-based and everything was manual, but we just didn't have a need or a necessity to change at that point. Then COVID came along and we all had to go work from home. We literally, within a week, took an entire office and turned it paperless. We went the route of Microsoft with SharePoint. There were collaboration boards. Everything was Excel based, which is a problem on its own. The best fiction is written in Excel. So what we did was that was the first turning point. And then we started realizing that SharePoint and Excel couldn't function with what we needed anymore. We needed more high level things, mainly to take out the complexity and the errors that were happening. So we used to find that if somebody left and they came along, the training process to get them up to scratch used to take 2 or 3 months. When we implemented the systems, they literally climbed onto the system and they could start working within the first week once they understood the flow of the work. So it took a lot of the training element out of it. It made that so much easier. It ran processes from beginning to end, but also in doing that, it produced data. It produced data for the management team to analyze, which is something that we didn't have before. Stupid things like when we planned in this last quarter, we did an above the line marketing campaign, and we expected to see the results within this quarter. And we didn't. And we were devastated as to why has it not materialized into money yet? And when we went back and we analyzed the data, we didn't factor in the 60-day buying cycle. And only the data could give us that information. So from a planning point of view, the data that comes out of these automated systems is phenomenal. It would take us weeks and weeks and weeks to put reports like that together because you'd physically have to go into each job analysis and work it out, whereas now it's at a click of a button.
So, I just again, practically speaking, how you map that out. I mean, you spoke about the fact that there's a team member like skilled up with Shane, right, with Leah, with Six Sigma. I think the point is, one thing I do want to contextualize is something like that for your kind of business is necessary because of how time and efficiency sensitive what you do and how that can impact your profitability very directly. I think for other people's businesses, it would be a difficulty for me to be able to justify someone like that with those kinds of skills in right now. And this is the difference between build, buy, and borrow, as I was saying. For you, it's necessary to buy. For other people, necessary to borrow. But even there, bringing in someone externally to help kind of guide this process is kind of a bit challenging. So I just want to understand whether it's build, buy, or borrow, kind of how you went about starting this process, picking the right systems. And like you said, it just started with process mapping. Again, it was from the outside in, from customers. But the systems themselves, how did you go about choosing those? How did you go about configuring them? How did you get them like rolled out and adopted in the team? Because that's quite a complicated journey in itself.
It was, yeah. So with my whole dev house debacle, I gave my staff PTSD when it came to systems. and they were not fans. Every time I came up with a new idea in terms of a system, they used to run away. They shut down. They were like, we can't do this again. So it was so important for us when we did this the right way, was to be able to pitch it to them and get their input on it as to, would this system help you? So I got a lot of research done. I built small parts of it in terms of when we found our systems, and then I gave it to them to test, to say, is this going to make your life better? Look, it's not like the system I built before that gave you PTSD. This is a really easy one that actually makes it work. And the selection criteria on them, at this point, obviously, costs are a major issue because you're going through the scale-up journey. Costs, your sales are not keeping up with your costs. You've got to build it first before you generate the sales. So cost was a major one. We actually opted for Zoho. So fairly new in the market. It's only been around for a couple of years, but it gives you so many options in one package. Whereas a lot of people use Sales Hub. That's exactly it. So many people have so many different expensive systems. Zoho combines everything into one at a very, very fair price. So that landed up being our saving grace. So yeah, we've moved on to Zoho, and not just on our CRM, we've gone into projects. Yeah. We've pulled Zoho in, and we use it on the operational side. We're using it on the HR side. A lot of it still has to be built, but it's all in process and it's all happening. And as we bring in new software, we also look at its compatibility into Zoho. So for instance, we found amazing technology in terms of AI software that can do an inventory and a survey in a client's home. And that all links into Zoho, which is phenomenal.
Amazing.
So now all our quoting is done on Zoho. We're really trying to make life easier in terms of the software side.
And the thing is, take that back a decade ago. That would. It's not about the fact that it would have been. There was no other choice. The fact that would have to be a human being with a clipboard.
Yeah, that's how it was done. People weren't even open to the idea of walking through the house on their phones. So funny enough, COVID was really kind to us in that space, because we had to develop a way to do surveys for up and coming moves when we weren't allowed to go out and work in a client's home. WhatsApp and Zoom videos and Teams calls were it at that point, but it wasn't a sustainable way of doing it. And this new software that came in just made it so perfect. And with COVID, it's made the user adoption so much better. I was so worried that the users wouldn't take to it. And we still get the odd people that are like, not really for them. They need somebody to come and see them. But 80% of our market is quite happy to not have somebody in their house and walk through on a cell phone.
Yeah, 100%. I think part of your story, and the reason why I like it, is that it's the combination between intentionality, coincidental timing, learning from the mistakes and errors, but also having kind of a plan and an idea of where you want to be moving forward. You know, whether it's with COVID and forcing you into do more self-service systems with your customers, whether it's the processes and then moving on to Zoho, whether it's the management team and HR, it's there's so much here again that makes sense in hindsight. And I think the point there, for so many entrepreneurs, it's chaos during, and it's like it constantly feels like we're in firefighting mode, constantly trying to get our way out of this. What do we prioritize? Do a little bit of everything at once. And only in the future can you look back and make sense of it. And it's like there was a better way. I could have done this and this and this, but you don't know what you don't know. And I think having that clarity of path and direction and what the priorities are, it's because the way I like to explain strategy is it's out of the million things I could be doing, what are the few things I should be doing? And it's more of an exercise of what is it you should be saying no to than what you should be saying yes to. And that for me is the simplicity when execution works, because it's very clear in terms of what we want to be doing. We've said no or not yet, that's my better way to frame it, is stop trying to make your vision a reality too quickly. Not yet. And then we just focus on these things and we map them out. And then from there, the fluidity comes in the execution, the learning and the figuring out and how we do that. But the picture is like we need to be more efficient as a business, right? Where are we going to start? We're going to start in ops. Fantastic. That's the priority for the quarter. Go. And it seems like you've gone down that path.
We have. And saying that, one of my management team's main functions in the company is to protect the company from me and my crazy ideas. So no, seriously, I have ideas constantly, and I want to change, and I want to build, and I want to grow. And we've gotten to a point where they need to protect the company from me and the changes. So we now have a wish board, and all my crazy ideas go on the wish board. And at the end of every quarter, we decide what we're going with and what we're not going with. And 90% of them actually fall off the wagon, to be honest. And we select the few that should be happening, and we proceed with those.
And I love that. I love that you can say that with, obviously such grace and humility, because it's quite the self-awareness journey to realize that, because it's, again, those are the habits that got you successful in the first place. But the point there is, like, this is where, as an entrepreneur, I used to hold the belief that a lot of entrepreneurs aren't cut out to be the CEOs of their own companies, but I'm wrong in that belief now, because the point is, it's just it's a different skill set and knowledge base around managing a company, being a leader, and developing strategy that's very achievable. But it's this point of accountability where I think the hardest part there is letting other people keep you in check. Where as an entrepreneur it's always just been you, and so, like, you're the one that's deciding. And it's that balance between this is the strategy and how we're going to execute it, but on the problem solving stuff and the ideas and the opportunities, I think having a team that you can really trust to be like, absolutely not, we're not doing that, but great idea, put it on the list, I think is so useful. So, Cheri, I think the final topic now, just to really show the complexity of scaling, is the fact that you're managing multiple geographies, right? So I think just talk to me about, like, your co-founder in Cape Town, Claire, how you manage these different sites. And, like, we've spoken so much around the processes, systems, customer quality, roles, people, culture, strategy, like, really the picture's well painted. Now, help me understand some of these challenges you had to overcome when doing this in multiple geographies.
So the very first geography that we opened was Cape Town, and that was in 2018. Claire, literally as a co-founder, drove down to Cape Town with a truck and one employee, and she literally went and started that branch. So it's the competing branch to Joburg at the moment, and it is doing beautifully. Subsequently, Claire's left the Cape Town branch, and she's now part of the management team back in Joburg, and they are operating on their own. The second one that we started was in Durban. And we started that just before COVID. And COVID wasn't kind and it didn't survive. But in doing that, we still had market share. We still had people moving from Durban to Joburg to Cape Town and down to Durban. And we needed to find a way to service these customers in a way where it looks like HouseHoppers servicing them, because they're contracting us to do it without physically having a branch in the region. So that was really, really challenging. What we realized, though, is we couldn't employ another moving company because that's all our IP. So we then give our IP to a competitor, which kind of doesn't make business sense at all. And what we decided to do was get a multitude of different suppliers, each with a different skill set, to cover a facet of the actual execution in that region. So, for instance, we'd have one person that would pack or unpack with their team. We would then have a removal company come in that would handle what they're good at in terms of loading or offloading the truck and wrapping the furniture. Then we'd have different suppliers that would come in and handle the DSTV. And we would then fly one of our team members down to coordinate all the different suppliers. And that way,
you got a whole bunch of specialists, but it sounds expensive.
It's not cheap. So obviously our margins when we work in those regions are a lot lower to keep the price affordable for our customers. Plus we've got to fly team members up from Joburg or Cape Town to go manage these moves, but it keeps our footprint in the area. As a logistics company, a footprint in different regions is absolutely essential. You can't be a moving company that only operates in one area. You're not going to grow that way. So without us having to physically start branches, because when we did the calculations with Cape Town, we were probably about R1 million under what we estimate, or over what we estimated. It's a really expensive exercise until a region gets going. And having a footprint in those regions and letting the brand awareness grow and the market education grow organically while we service it, we then have the opportunity, as soon as it grows, to step in and put a branch in with an established client base. So it's a really great model to move into to be able to service new geographies and then be able to move into them when the time is right.
Yeah. And again, that's also the practical elements of another example of the build, borrow, buy. is that in this geography, there's not enough demand that we can buy or build. We kind of need to borrow a specialist. We need to repurpose someone. And the nature of that is it's the same thing with service providers or HR, marketing, finance, etc. Is that it's going to cost you more in the process of doing that in the beginning stages. But the point is you don't have enough work to justify doing it properly and permanently, because doing that properly is even more expensive compared to what you're getting. And it's that separation that's so important to realize. Cheri, this has been such an informative journey. It's been you've made so many things so useful and understandable that this has become, for me, one of the gold standard podcasts I have around what the scaling journey is. And I'm not saying that out of flattery. It really is, in terms of everything about what it takes to scale and the parts of the journey. So thank you for sharing that. I guess the only thing that I've got really left to chat to you about is, what does the next 6 to 18 months look like for you and for HouseHoppers?
So next 6 to 18 months, we've kind of we've gone through a massive change period in the last couple of months. From now until the end of the financial year, it's stabilized. So we're going to start silly season soon. So our motto, our goals for the next 6 months is to sell, execute, and delight the customer. When we hit the new year, we're then going to start building again. So we're quite specific about when we build and grow and when we maintain. We've learned this over the years. It's not a great idea to build while it's silly season. It doesn't work. Things fall down.
Of course not. Yeah, especially if you've got a more seasonal business, then it's crucial. And I think every business has got some form of seasonality to that. So I just love that point of just focusing on sales, customer execution, and delighting the customers. Was that right? I just love the three there. And then you build on the other time. Cheri, finally, what is just the one question that I haven't asked you that I should have asked you that you'd like to answer now?
What's next in terms of people that are starting the scale-up journey? So a lot of entrepreneurs decide, okay, we're going to start scaling. We're going to move on. We're going to grow this business. The best bit of advice that I can give people like that is go do your homework first. This is not a journey for sissies. It is hard. Do the homework, put the plans in place, and then embark on the journey. I tend to do things ask about face, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say that.
No, it's fine. Yeah, 100%.
No, but I learned the hard way. And if I can give any entrepreneur the guidance out there, get yourself a good coach. Do the planning with them first and then embark on the journey. Don't do it the other way around. It becomes really, really hard and really, really expensive as well.
Couldn't agree more. Cheri, thank you so much for being on the Founder Files. I can't wait to see you go through this stabilization period and what you're going to build next and grow in the years to come. Can't wait to see you have more permanent operations around the country and then, I guess, world domination.
Oh, absolutely. All right, Kevin, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time.
As you can tell this episode with Cheri, she has been through the scaling journey for many years. I mean, a lot of these lessons came through true trial and error and true problems, but there was that critical point in her when she started burning out. So to you listening, if you're burning out and overwhelmed with how spread thin you are in your business, and this is affecting your health, affecting your time, then I think this is time to have a conversation with me to find out how you can scale more sustainably. Our strategy development program at Metavolve is deliberately built for entrepreneurs like you who want to take the chaos out of scaling their businesses. We've taken many of our clients from absolute chaos or even their business plateauing for a few years to growing revenue by up to 20% within just 6 months of working with us, with net profit increases of up to 63%. And many of our clients getting to actually take a holiday for the first time and properly switch off for 10 or more days whilst their business keeps growing in that period. My team and I will take you through a structured process to help you not only overcome your scaling issues, but also create a holistic strategy tailored for your business. A strategy that's easier for your team to understand, to talk about, and to execute. By the end of it, you and your team will have a clear roadmap to grow faster and more sustainably. Now, we're so confident in the value that we provide that if after 3 sessions you don't see the impact, you'll get your money back. Now, are you ready to grow your business more sustainably and get rid of some of this chaos? Visit metavolve.co to book a 30-minute introductory call with me to see how we can help you take the chaos out of scaling. But before you go, remember to like, comment, or share this podcast with your network so other people like you can receive incredibly valuable stories from entrepreneurs like Cheri. But until next time, thank you for listening. Cheers for now.